Hi everyone, today's video is going to be a Q&A so you can get to know me a little bit better. I did mention that I'm going to be moving into a condo at the beginning of August. My husband and I have just bought our first home, which is very exciting, but we're going to be painting and moving everything over the course of about 2 weeks, and I need to pre-film stuff. So I figured one of the better ways to pre-film something was to do a Q&A, because then a few of you can get to know me a little bit better. So thankfully you guys have helped me out, and I'm going to be answering some questions that came in via Facebook, a previous video, and I think I've got some from Instagram too. So let's dive right in. All right, so Kim is asking, if you could only buy one makeup brand for the rest of your life, what would it be? And I think a lot of you are going to think I'm going to say Too Faced, but it's actually Inglot. They have the most consistent products that I've used across the board, so I could stick with using them as a brand and be happy with my overall look. I love their foundation. I love their eyeshadows. Their gel liners are also incredible. And for me, eyeshadows are pretty much like the thing that I care most about in makeup, and Inglot definitely has the best variety and best assortment that I can think of, and the quality is also consistent. So I would stick with Inglot if I could only buy one brand for the rest of my life. Kim also asked, who are my favorite YouTubers? And I'm gonna keep this to people I don't actually know in real life, because otherwise I just name all my friends. But one of my favorites, although she's become a little bit less consistent in uploading lately, is Sharon Farrell. She is an Irish YouTuber who lives in Australia, and her content is just always lovely. I love her vlogs. They are always so perfectly edited. I love her makeup tutorials. Basically, I love everything that she puts out. I also really like Mikey from Glam and Gore. She is always creative. The stuff that this girl comes up with, I'm just like, how? How did you even think of that stuff? So the title Glam and Gore basically describes her channel, but she can do really, really glamorous looks and then absolutely disgusting ones on the gore side. It is such a neat mashup that it's always like, wow, I'm always taken aback by just how amazing her artwork is. And to mention a third, I really like Bethany. She's currently in the NYX Face Awards, but she comes up with amazing face painting. This girl can contour and color her face in completely abnormal shades, and it looks like that's what her skin should look like. I've never seen anything like that. Like, she can do like a teal face and put in shadowing and contours that make it look like, yes, that could be your face color. She does wonders with color and face paint, and I kind of wish I had some of that in me, but I feel like possibly because I don't practice enough, I just enjoy watching her because I know I can't do it. Just going to YouTube now, so I'm gonna read through the questions on here, and the first one is from Jeanette, and it said, I would love to hear your makeup story. What got you started in makeup and what do you love about it? I definitely got into makeup at a young age. I was 12 years old because I needed makeup for figure skating. I used to figure skate competitively. And obviously if you're not wearing makeup, your features get totally lost because you're very far from the judges and you need your features to stand out. So my aunt took me to MAC when I was 12 years old, and I bought my first eyeshadow from them. And I think I might have gotten a makeover, but I can't remember quite all of that because that was 22 years ago now. And my first eyeshadow by MAC was the shade Haux, H-A-U-X, and I just fell in love from there. I know my mom wasn't that happy because my aunt had basically introduced me to expensive makeup at a very young age. I mean, spending, it was only $10 per eyeshadow back then, but for a 12-year-old, $10 for an eyeshadow in whatever, 95 or whatever it was pretty pricey. And from there it just really developed. I got my friends into MAC. I would take them to get makeovers done for their birthdays because you could basically go in, I think it's still the same now, you go in, you get a makeover, and then you basically buy $40 in product, which covers your makeover, but then you've got the products anyway. And it really just blossomed from there. And I was stuck on MAC for absolute years. I thought they were the only brand worth caring about, and it was only recently in like the last 5 to 10 years where I discovered YouTube that I was like, oh, there are other brands out there, and hey, they're actually quite good too. For me now, what I love about makeup is that it's very transformative. I needed it when I was younger because I wanted my features to stand out when I was skating, but over the years it just became an art form to me. Like, it wasn't necessarily about trying to look pretty, I just wanted to put colors on my face. So, you know, everybody when they're in their teens starts wearing this blue eyeshadow because it's a color and it's exciting and stuff like that. I did that, I just never grew out of it, and instead of wearing it like a thick paste on my eyes, I just learned to wear it softly or heavily, but incorporate other colors into it. So I never lost my desire to play with colors on my face, but I feel like a lot of people did over time. And I don't know, I'm happy I never lost that desire because now I can play with color on my face and it doesn't make me feel weird. And I know a lot of people are so concerned about how brightly colored eyeshadow is gonna come across to other people. And I always just wanna say, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what other people think. If you wanna wear it, put it on your face. Samantha then asked if you could make any limited edition makeup item a permanent item, what one would you choose? And hands down, the Kat Von D Mi Vida Loca Remix palette. That thing needs to be permanent. So many people missed out on it, and it's a darn shame because that palette is absolutely beautiful. And I also like it because if it was permanent, maybe it would encourage people to play with color a little bit more because it does encompass that whole rainbow spectrum of colors, but it's also got that neutral color wheel in the middle. And I know I keep talking about that, but it is one of those items that I feel like would have worked for so many people if only it had not been a limited edition item. Beth asked a few questions. She said, what did you study at university? And I studied, I started in kinesiology. I went to York University here in Toronto. I started in kinesiology, but I didn't have the brain for it, or I didn't have the desire to study for it. Maybe I should say that instead. So I did 2 years of kinesiology and I was bad. Like I was barely passing my courses and I was just like, I'm not happy. So I ended up switching in my 3rd year to humanities and I graduated with a bachelor's of humanities, which when people ask me what that is, I can't really tell you. It was a lot of essay writing, some in communications. Mostly it was just about getting a degree at the time though. Beth also asked what's it like living in Canada, and I'm gonna guess you're in the US based on that question. That maybe that's not a good assumption. It feels very safe. I don't have to worry about a lot of things. We have healthcare that will cover me for anything that happens. I never have to worry about breaking bones or having cancer or anything like that. I mean, yes, it would affect me physically if I had those things, but I don't have to worry about the financial ramifications of ever getting sick. And it's funny because my husband is American and he obviously lives here in Canada, but his mindset towards a lot of medical things is so different than how we handle things in Canada. You don't have to think about going to the doctor or getting an MRI or a CAT scan. And I've had all of these things done and those would have cost me thousands of dollars and I don't have to pay for any of it. Almost all of my family has had cancer at some point in their life and they haven't had to pay for any kind of treatment either. So that's another side note. A lot of my family has had cancer, but they've all survived it. We have a high rate of cancer, but we all tend to live through it. So anyway, there's also a huge difference in terms of culture towards guns. I couldn't even tell you how to go and get one here in this country. I have no freaking idea how I would go and get one, nor do I want one. But I remember reading on running blogs about women who were out for a run at night and would carry a concealed weapon, like a gun, just on out for a run. And that just blows my mind to this day. I can't imagine living in a country where you feel so unsafe that you need to carry a gun with you when you're out for a run by yourself. I run at 9 o'clock at night, sometimes at 10 o'clock at night. Yes, I stick to well-lit paths, but it's still dark and it's still nighttime and I don't ever feel like I'm in danger for my life. So Canada in general feels very homey, welcoming, and safe. Beth also asked if I could make a collection with MAC, what would you do? And I'm not very good at this creative side of like creating products, but I saw Temptalia once was asked this question and she said that she would love to see a World of Warcraft collaboration with MAC. And I thought that was freaking cool. So I'm gonna take that answer and say like a World of Warcraft themed MAC collection. I would love to see different shades based on characters like Jaina Proudmoore's lipstick or like an eyeliner based on Varian Rin or just something like that. I think that would be really neat. World of Warcraft ties into the next question very nicely because Dominica has said, you mentioned me, that I met my husband playing WoW, and if I could explain a little bit about that. So I used to play on the European servers for World of Warcraft, and David, my husband, played on the North American ones. And we kind of met through a message board that connected all of this particular class. So I'm not sure everyone's going to be aware of World of Warcraft, but we both played a class of character called a Paladin Tank. So we connected on this message board because everybody would talk strategy on how to kill bosses, how to best gear your characters and stuff like that. And we just really connected because we were playing the same kind of character. We both really like cats, and it just kind of spiraled from there. So I started playing a little bit on the North American servers because he was there, I had some friends there, and I could kind of like try a different aspect of the game. I was already raiding European side. In fact, I was a raid leader for my guild. And I just, you know, wanted to play with more people. I played a lot of World of Warcraft, okay guys? Like, we're talking like more hours than I was at my job in a week. Like, I would work 37.5 hours, but I assure you I was probably playing WoW like 50 to 60 hours a week. It was a lot. So I would raid a little bit North American side, and then I would come back to the European side, and then also raid with my team, and he eventually created a character on the European realms, and then he would raid with my group, and basically that's how the relationship blossomed. So granted, at this point we had never met in person, and then one time I was going to be in New York City for a soccer tournament, and I was just like, hey, do you want to come meet? So he flew from Wisconsin. We met in New York City. This was around in March, and then by July of the same year we got married. So it was a really quick turnaround on that. He had moved to Canada just in June to visit, but we had the intention of like staying together at that point. So we knew that the visit would eventually turn into like permanent residency, which he then got a few months later after we'd been married. She also asked about our cats. So we have two cats. One is Nemo, I consider him my cat, and the other one is Colma, which is more David's cat. Now they basically look the same. Everybody thinks they're the same cat. They're both black cats. The only major difference is that Nemo has a little bit more of a white bow tie on his chest, and Colma is, I'd say 80% of the size of Nemo. So Nemo's bigger than Colma. So Nemo I got almost 9 years ago from a Toronto shelter. I think it was Toronto Animal Services. And at first I wasn't really sure what I was gonna name him. And I had gotten it with an ex-boyfriend of mine at the time, although it was to be my cat because I wanted it as a birthday present. I was trying to tie in the name to like a video game character or something. So originally I was gonna call Nemo Link, but it didn't stick. Like, it never sounded right, and it just rolling off the tongue to call a cat Link just didn't work for him. So whatever, out of nowhere, I was like, I wanna call him Nemo. And my boyfriend at the time was like, what, like the fish? And I was like, yeah, but now it's his name, so it's not a fish anymore. And I've heard a lot of people say over the years that if you're gonna name a pet, choose a name that ends on a vowel because it's easier to say and to like sort of call for them. And you know what? I actually agree with that. Nemo did originally come with the name Billy, but he was like a month or two old by the time I got him, so the name hadn't really stuck. So he's Nemo now. So Colma is the younger one. We think she's about, I think 4 or 5 years old now. She is a rescue cat. She was found outside by David in the middle of February. Middle of the night, it was freezing cold. We just had a few winter storms, and she was wandering around just kind of howling. And he took her in. She had like an infected eye, she had a cold, she was not eating because she couldn't, I think cats don't eat if they can't smell. At least that's what my husband told me. So she wasn't eating anything because her nose was blocked, etc. And he checked with the neighbors to find out if anybody was missing a cat. And no one was. So took her in, healed her up, and then she just became a part of the family. I was a little bit concerned at first how Nemo was gonna deal with it. He is, I would say, a spoiled little child. And it's been touch and go. It's been years now, but he's still like, they still pick on each other. I guess they're kind of like brother and sister now. Like, she kind of like pokes at him and he snaps and he's like, go away little child kind of thing. But they get along enough that it's not like absolute madness here all the time. So her name is Colma, K-O-L-M-E, which means 3 in Norwegian, because this is my husband's 3rd cat and he just liked the way that sounded. I actually think it's pronounced more like Golme, like the K sounds more like a G strung together, but I don't know any Norwegian. This is just based on things I've looked up online. So Leather and Jade asked me a really specific question. It's if you were to create a completely customized palette, ideal to you, and it was with shades that already existed in other makeup palettes. What would you put in it? And I've literally sat here for the last 5 minutes trying to figure out how the heck I would ever answer this satisfactorily to me, because there's so many shades in so many palettes that I love that I feel like that would be impossible. And not to mention the overall aesthetic of the palette would probably be compromised, because I'd want like orange and purple and green, and now I'm getting a headache just thinking about it because there's so many options. So if I was to do a palette on my own, it would be something that's very similar to a rainbow palette. I think the Kat Von D Mi Vita Loca remix was probably the closest I would ever get to the perfect palette in terms of shades. However, that layout has got to go. That disc thing does not work for anybody. So I would probably put something more together in something like an Inglot palette. So I really like the aesthetic of the Inglot palettes. I like that it's got this hard acrylic plastic. You can still see the shadows through the frosted plastic, and the pans are enormous. So maybe this is cheating, but I would choose something that's similar to Inglot's packaging, but with all of the shades from the Kat Von D Mi Vita Loca remix, including the neutrals, because I think that is super important to have, especially in a rainbow palette. Rachel asks, what is your favorite and least favorite bronzer? Favorite bronzer, hands down, is the Physicians Formula Butter Bronzer. I love that thing so, so much, and I've not found anything that's topped it in recent years. No, definitely not since I bought it, and nothing in my collection from before was better than that bronzer. As for least favorite, I don't have it anymore because I've long since given it away, but the NYC Sunny Bronzer that so many people loved was just awful for me. Like, I don't understand why anybody liked it. Mine had very little pigmentation, and it developed hard pan the instant you put your brush in it. It was like you tap on and suddenly it's just like a sheen of like plastic over top of the bronzer. I'd scrape off the layer, try again, and then it was just the same thing. Hard pan every single time. So I threw that bronzer in a blogger swap pile and never saw it again, and I am thankful for that. That thing was terrible. In line with the design your own palette idea, I did get a question from Tava, who asked, if you had to make a palette, what one color would you need to put in it so that it would be considered yours? And I think pretty much at this point, every color of the rainbow has been created, but if I had to choose one color that has been my absolute favorite over years, that's gonna be this shade by Inglot. This particular shade by Inglot has been a longtime favorite, so much so that you can see that I've hit pan on it. It's just this gorgeous mermaid green teal shade. It has a wonderful reflect to it that is just ethereal. It's so gorgeous. I love this all over the lid. I love it on the inner corner. And if I had to pick one shade that would be like my shade, I think it would be this. Yeah, it's just so gorgeous. Every time I look at it, I'm like, oh, it's pretty. And that's gonna be it for the Q&A. Thank you so much for sending your questions in. It was a lot of fun to answer them, and hopefully you learned something new about me. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.